Hello, hello, hello. My name is Raymond Johnson, and I want to continue a discussion that we have been having about 5 ways to communicate effectively with someone who is an S, right? We've been talking about 5 ways to communicate effectively with everyone that you know, but now we're focusing on the S in the DISC profile. What are we talking about? This right here. Go back to our first video that talks about how to communicate effectively with 5 ways to communicate effectively with everyone that you know. And make sure you look at the first video that we talked about, the D. It's the blue cover, and when you get into it, you'll see a lot of red. Well, go back when you see the red, and you will see this particular picture right here. D, we're all made of 4 different components. The D, the decisive, the I, the interactive, the S, which is the stabilizer, and the C, which is the cautious. And we use an analogy to talk about the pilot, flight attendant, grounds crew, and traffic controller that is inside of all of us. But what we're focusing on today is someone who primarily identifies as an S, and they are stabilizing, right? So what is your approach to the pace of your work environment? That's what we're focusing on here. How to speak with someone whose primary concern is focusing on their pace. So let's go ahead and look at our 5 ways. Number 1, we've got care. Make sure that you care for the person who is in high S, right? Know that they don't think like you and they don't act like you, but make sure that you show that you care. I could even add in here, be respectful, but make sure that you know that they don't act like you or think like you, right? Make sure that you know that they are not lazy. What did I just say? Make sure that you know that they are not lazy, all right? And make sure also that that they know that you know that they love peace. Let's put it like that. Make sure that you are aware that they prefer peace. So please avoid creating things for them to do. Now, they will get their work done because they love the answer to the question of how. So they'll go ahead and follow a plan, right? But don't create stuff for them to do. You are at the very fundamental portion of who they are. You are draining all of the oxygen out of their lungs when you create more stuff to do. So make sure you've got yourself together and that you've got a good plan that you're executing when you're communicating with your team who's an S. Now, let's be very clear. Most people are primarily an S, a green, a flight attendant, or they have this with some other combination in the DISC profile for their behavioral preference. So we're talking right now to over 80% of the people who are watching this video. Why do we say that? Because you need to realize that they love peace. They don't think like you do, and they're not lazy. So show care for them. And like I said, I could call it respect. All right, that's number 1. Number 2, make sure you listen to them. S's are very good communicators, and be sure that you're willing to listen to what they're fearful about, right? You may not understand it for yourself, but guess what? You need to understand it for them. You need to listen to what they're actually trying to say. I'll never forget, I used to see people who would talk about being afraid to fly, and I never understood it. I'm not afraid to be on an airplane, right? Turbulence doesn't bother me. And I never understood how a person could be afraid to fly. It just didn't make sense. You're not sitting on the window and you can't see outside the window. And you know, the very fact that you're just high up in the air makes you afraid. Yes. And one day I'll never forget, I was flying and this lady was right next to me on an airplane. I don't know where we were going, but we were high up in the air. It was a long flight, so we were much higher than normal. She was absolutely terrified. Now, was she hysterical? No, but she was holding it together, but I could see literal fear in her. And I reached out and just touched her on the hand. I said, it's okay. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. I should say her wrist. And I went ahead and I touched her. I said, it's going to be all right. You're going to make it. And she looked at me and she said, thank you. And she sat there in total silence, but she felt better because someone was willing to listen to her. Now, guess what? I didn't hear her explanation, but I listened to the emotions that she was expressing simply because she was afraid. And guess what? If you're not afraid, then you should be able to listen to those around you who are afraid about something. Make sure you also, when you're listening, try not to cause friction when you communicate with them. You know why? Because if you create friction, they will shut down. Now remember, most people in the world are primarily S's, or they have S combined in their behavioral profile in the DISC index with green and some other color. So make sure that when you communicate with them, that you don't cause friction when you communicate, or they will shut down. So how can you do that? Well, number one, make sure you keep calm in your discussions with them and be gentle. What do we say? Two things: keep calm and be gentle. And then number three, in this same listen thing, this listen point, is they don't like insecurity. So assure them. If you hear them saying what they're worried about, assure them. It's not that they don't know, they just need assurance because they prefer security, not insecurity. And so they feel insecure about something, right? Then we have encourage. This is our next point here. Make sure you encourage those S's, those grounds crews, the people who are green. Encourage them. Communicate in terms of stability. Avoid risks as much as is possible, right? Communicate in that term. Because when you communicate in terms of stability and you avoid risks, man, do you know what you've done for an S or a grounds crew? You've encouraged them, right? And help them face their fears, right? So how do you do that? You encourage them to face it. Don't force them and dominate and push them, but encourage them to face the things that they're scared of, and to do what? Still move ahead. So you've encouraged them, but then you've also helped them to move ahead. And it's all about time. They need time. Why? Because this is the person who's is primarily focused on pace, right? Then we have support. Make sure that you support them through your gentle nudges that you give them. You know, create this context of peace and quiet. And then lastly, we have be patient and explain how. We talked about this at the beginning of the video. They need to know the answer of how. Take time to introduce change. Don't rush change. Make sure you take time and you explain the how, explain the plan. Make sure you communicate in terms of how we're going to do this. Not that we're going to do this, but here's how. Show them the plan. What actually needs to take place and happen? When will these things take place? What should they expect? And guess what? When you do that, that feeds their need for predictability, for stability, right? Here's a trick. When someone who's a D or a red or a pilot asks what, they want to know what are we doing? Guess what? The yellow wants to know, well, who? And then the blue, what the blue person does is they ask, well, why? But the green person wants to know how. So break down these processes into small steps and make sure that you're very repetitive in this whole thing. So here's actually the last one. Be considerate, right? Be considerate. Be careful about how to express criticism to them, and make sure you do it in private. And this goes back to my first point is, be respectful, right? We talked about caring and showing care for them, but be respectful, man. Pull them aside. Make sure that they know that you still like them and care for them and respect them. And that the group will work better if they do this, because S's, grounds crews, green, they are very sensitive to this because they care about the group. They care about the group. And so you let them know that if they go ahead and do these particular things, that it will be better for the group if these changes are made. Be specific as to the particular type of behavior you want. Don't assume that they understand what your conversation means, but be specific in how you go ahead and you address it. So let's look at our summary. Our summary for the S is make sure you show that you care for them. That's the respect piece that we talked about. Number 2, make sure that you listen to them. Number 3, make sure that you encourage them. And number 4, make sure that you're patient and explain how you're going to do something. Our last one, number 5, be considerate. Be considerate, all right? My name is Raymond Johnson. We've talked about in this portion of our conversation 5 ways to communicate effectively with someone who's an high S. And guess what? We've got one more to go in this conversation. And you know which one that is going to be. That's going to be the C. So, my name is Raymond Johnson. I will see you in our next video. Take care.